Hi! As a regular user of the ERT300, I've always been curious to find out what is the most commonly used or the optimum range when it comes to dynamic tension in a player's racket. Now, if you're not familiar with an ERT300 or dynamic tension, watch this video first. Now that we know what an ERT300 is and what it can do, let's take a deep dive into dynamic tension. Before I talk about dynamic tension, I'll talk about string bed deflection and how these two are related. From my experience using the Babolat RDC for over 30 years, here are my guidelines for the optimum range for string bed deflection based on the type of strings and string setup. If you're not familiar with an RDC or string bed deflection, here's another video you can watch. Alright, so let's get into the guidelines for these different types of strings. You notice that the nylon, that includes synthetic gut and multi-filament, natural gut, a hybrid, which is either a nylon or natural gut in the mains, and a polyester in the crosses. Or it could be reversed, either way. And then polyester here. Alright, so let's take a look at this first row where I have all the RDC string bed deflection readings. And they do vary depending on the type of string. So you can see that the nylon here, I have a range of 58 to 66. The natural gut, there was a largest range here from 54 to 70. I feel like the clients that use natural gut, some of them are for reasons for arm issues, so they're stringing at a very low tension, and some still go pretty high, but because of the fact that the natural gut is elastic, they can get by with that. Now the hybrid string, you'll see a slight decline in tension due to the fact that there's polyester in either the mains or crosses. And then it makes sense that the polyester is definitely going to be a lower string bed deflection because of the fact that the strings are so stiff. In this next row, I have the reference tension that I used, that I set in my machine to get these string bed deflection readings. And I only recorded, for the purpose of this video, head sizes between 98 to 100. So for the nylon strings, you can see that I typically would go from 52 to 56. So that's what I would consider like a mid-range tension. And for natural gut, I had a larger range because of the fact that there's a larger range here. Now when we got into the hybrid, you'll notice that there's two numbers here. So this is for the mains and this is the crosses. And this is when the nylon is, or natural gut is in the mains. And there's still a 4-pound differential if you compare the 48 to the 52 here. So that's how that worked there. And the polyester, you'll see that there is a lower range typically because of the fact that the string bed deflection reading is lower. And you really want to make sure that it is lower because of the stiffness of the polyester strings. Before I get into the dynamic tension guidelines that I created, let's look at the ERT300 conversion card. Specifically here where it mentions your style of play, find your best DT. And it describes the player and the range that goes with it. So for a defensive from the baseline player, it suggests 28 to 34 would be ideal. Dynamic and offensive, 35 to 41. Fast and aggressive, 42 to 46. And very fast, very aggressive, 47 to 56. I can see where this guideline is the way it is based on how hard the player is probably hitting. So it makes sense that you would get a higher DT. But in my opinion, I think this guideline is a little bit outdated. It's not factoring in the type of string that the player would be playing with. Now I know it's a general guideline. I like to think of my game as fast and aggressive, but my DT is nowhere close to 42 to 46. So either I'm not fast and aggressive or I'm playing with the wrong DT, but I'll reveal that later. After recording the dynamic tensions of my clients' rackets in these string categories, I tried to find out what is the equivalent of the ERT300 dynamic tension reading compared to the RDC string bed deflection reading. So here's what I got. So I kept the same reference tension because I wanted to see what again is the equivalent of the ERT300 reading. And what I got here was between 36 to 38. Now for the natural gut, there is a larger range because of the fact that there's a larger range here. For the hybrid, 34 to 36, and polyester, 32 to 34. So these numbers here serve, for me, it serves as a mid-range. So that's typically what I would shoot for in most people's rackets, is to try and get that dynamic tension. Now, of course, you can always adjust it depending on the player. So next, let's take a look at a poll that I conducted recently, and I wanted to find out what other stringers and what other players are using in their rackets. And again, it's based on the type of string. Now in the poll, I did treat nylon and natural gut the same, so I have the same numbers for both of these columns. But if you take a look at this one here, 47% like the 36 to 38 DT, and well, it happened to match there, so that's good. I'm not going to talk too much about the natural gut because the numbers are kind of skewed here. The hybrid, 63% like the 35 to 37, and it's slightly higher than what I have here, but it's, you know, within the range. And polyester, I got 44% that voted that they like 34 to 36, and my range is a little bit lower, from 32 to 34. I tend to like a lower tension in my rackets, and I think I tend to recommend it in other clients' rackets. But for example, my racket, I string mine at, it's a hybrid setup currently, and I do 40, 38, and my DT is at 27. So if we take a look at this here, it's nowhere close to the chart that I have here. And my string bed deflection is 35. So these DT numbers serve as sort of a mid-range that's optimum for most players. But of course, you can adjust higher or lower based on their particular needs. I did want to note that these tension ranges that I came up with here was based on a 98 to 100 square inch head size, and typically it was a 16-18 or a 16-19 string pattern. So let's say if it was an 18 by 20 string pattern with the same head size, that would definitely affect the reference tension, probably be lower than 52 depending on the string type. But that would be my first approach if I'm trying to target a certain DT. Another factor would be the head size. If you're, let's say, larger than 100, then there you would have to adjust the tension, the reference tension, higher. The third variable would be the string. Sometimes within the same string type, certain strings will string up tighter and some will string looser. So there's all these variables, but if you keep a database of what you're stringing up on your client's rackets, after a while you'll have enough information to figure out what would be the best reference tension to use to get the optimum DT. One of the great features of the ERT300 is that it can help you track tension loss, and it can also help you advise clients when it's time to restring. So here on the conversion card, it states that you should restring your racket when the DT tension loss reaches 10% and a maximum of 20%. Well, I guess if you're a picky player, then the 10% category would make sense. Or if you're a penny pincher player, then 20% might be your category. But here are some guidelines that the IART recommends to help you and your clients restring more wisely. If you're a high performance player, then 15% would be your maximum. If you're a club or league player, then 20%. And if you're just a weekend warrior or a recreational player, then 25% would be your category. Here's something that randomly happened. I was in the middle of filming a video, and obviously my shop was open. So I had a customer that just came in. They're visiting here in Hawaii. He lives in Germany and his friend lives in Australia. So they brought in their racket and needed an emergency stringing. So I went ahead and did it for them. And what he brought in was a blade 98. It's version 8 in a 16-19 string pattern. Now it didn't have these strings on it. I just went ahead and restrung it. It had a hybrid setup, and he was complaining that the balls were going long. He looked like a pretty strong hitter. So I told him that with the strings that he brought in, this polyester string, it's a Wilson Revolve and a 17 gauge, and he never tried polyester in a full bed before. So I told him that should help his control. He had really no idea what the tension should be. So what I did first is I took a dynamic tension reading with my ERT300 on his existing hybrid setup, and it came out to 23 DT. So if you do the conversion on this, it doesn't go down to 23. 26 is the lowest. So I'm guessing it must have been at 35 pounds. I'm not sure how long he had the strings in his racket, but I always like to compare what I have, whatever strings are in the racket, the before and then after I string it. Now in terms of the tension, what I wanted to do, since he's never tried it before, is I wanted to go with the range, within that range of polyester where I had 32 to 34. So my goal was to get 33, to be right in the middle. But if the reading came out to 32 or 34, I'll still be happy with that. So what I did is I checked my other clients' racket, other clients that had the same racket, to see what I did previously on their racket. So I came up with 48 pounds as what I would set on my machine. So I'm going to go ahead and take a reading. No, I actually did the reading earlier, and it did come out to 33. Trust me, it did. But it's been a little bit of a while since I've recorded this again. So I'm going to go ahead and see what it's, okay. Well, right now it's at 32. So it did settle in a little bit, but you know, I'm still happy with that reading because of the fact that it's within that range. And this would be Chad's first time using a full bed of polyester. So this would be a good starting point for him. And when he gets his racket restrung in Germany, he could ask the stringer to either go tighter or looser based on the 48 pounds that I used on this one. Well, I hope that 48 pounds works for him. But again, he can make the adjustment in Germany when he goes back. And hopefully we'll keep his balls in the tennis court. All right, so I found out this guy's name is not Chad, it's Ruslan.
Ruslan, yeah.
Ruslan, so yeah, his Chad is over there. He doesn't want to be in the camera. But anyway, here's your racket. I strung it in like 20 minutes, but I assure it's a good string job. I went with 48 pounds. Okay. So here it is. Here's your
Thank you so
new
much.
custom strung racket.
Absolutely. Oh, it's even sticker on it. That looks dope.
Thanks for watching. Happy stringing.
And let your strings play. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Yeah, thank you. You didn't know you were
When we're back, we'll absolutely come back to your store.